Hey guys, Jeff Brines here at Vital MTB with two of the most exciting bikes for 2019, the Stumpjumper Expert 29 and the Stumpjumper EVO 29. Let's start with some basics. The EVO is only offered in aluminum. It is specialized, more aggressive, kind of progressive version of the Stumpjumper. It's also a great value at $3,600 with some really good parts. We're going to get into that in a second. But the geometry is really the special part. So with the EVO, you get a reduced offset fork, 44 millimeters as opposed to 51. You get a slacker head tube angle at 64.5 degrees. You're going to get a longer chainstay, just a little bit, and a ground scraping 12.9 inch-ish BB, depending on your tires. And like I said, at $3,600, it is a steal of a value considering there's a bike shop involved. You get code brakes, you get a Fox 36 up front, DPX2 out back, 30 millimeter internal diameter or internal width rims. Just a very, very well thought out spec. Whoever is speccing this bike at Specialized at this price deserves a raise. They did a heck of a job. Turning to the Stumpjumper Expert, it's a very different bike in terms of how it's spec'd and geometry. So it's a little steeper, 66 degrees. It's a little shorter in reach, a little shorter in the rear end, a little taller. Obviously carbon frame, carbon wheels, and at $5,500, right about there, it's definitely not a bad value. I mean, it's hard to find a bike with carbon wheels for under $6,000. It's definitely worth looking at as well, but obviously looks to be set up for a different purpose. Both bikes have the same amount of travel out back and the same amount of travel up front. So how'd they fare? Well, let's start with climbing. Climbing both bikes was actually pleasurable, or as pleasurable as climbing can be. Neither bike I was like very upset with the climbing, and to be honest, even though the EVO is heavier and an aluminum bike, I didn't notice it go uphill that much worse. The one thing I noticed about the EVO that I struggled with was in the desert, just with, or anywhere technical, with such a low bottom bracket, you're gonna hit pedals a lot more. So if you live somewhere where technical climbing is a thing, maybe definitely go away from the EVO, go to something more like the Expert, which has a higher bottom bracket. But obviously this is Vital. We don't really care about the uphill. Let's talk about the downhill part. So when I threw a leg over the EVO, that was the first bike I was able to test out of the two. I was really excited. I knew Jared and Curtis was racing the actual normal Stumpjumper at the EWS level, and I expected an enduro bike. I'm a racer myself, definitely not at their level, but I expected something that was going to be really, a formidable bike on an enduro race course. I didn't find that. I didn't find that the EVO, really either of these bikes going downhill, was able to really eat bumps in a way that I would like my enduro bike to eat bumps. That doesn't mean they're not capable. It just means that they're not forgiving. And in fact, the 140 millimeters of rear travel often felt like less to me. It was really kind of overzealous through the immediate part of its travel, and then it kind of hit a wall late in its travel. It is a very progressive suspension design, which I usually like, and frankly I couldn't put my finger on exactly what the issue was with the rear suspension, but it just felt like less. Is that a bad thing? Overall, it's really not if you put the right lens on the bike. This is a trail bike. Both these bikes are trail bikes. They are not really your flagship enduro bike, in my opinion. There are better options for your commoner, like most of us here, to pick as a race bike. We need a little more forgiveness than these really offer, but at the same time, a lot of the long travel enduro bikes aren't the most fun to go pedal for 4 or 5 hours, which I've done with both of these and I've loved. As a straight up trail bike, they're both excellent. Let's go through some of the differences though. The EVO has a very special feel through the corners. That's where I loved this bike. It was incredibly balanced. It's very low. The reduced offset fork, I mean, I struggle to go back. I only want to ride reduced offset forks and slack front ends. I think it's awesome. So in the right terrain, kind of twisty, steep stuff, the EVO was a weapon. It was like my favorite bike I've ever ridden. But righty stuff got really chunky and really kind of more gnarly. The rear end of that bike kind of let me down, whereas the geometry really wanted me to push harder and harder. So it was really interesting and really a tough balance there. The carbon Stumpjumper, on the other hand, had a more on the top of the bike feeling. A little more, I wouldn't want to say old school at this point. It's a very new school's whatever 66 degree head tube angle doesn't feel old by any standard, but it definitely felt more on top of the bike, or had that more on top of the bike feeling as opposed to in the bike. but it also cornered very well, and it is clear why guys like Jared and Curtis can race this at that level. It also shows how good they are, and that there's no way I could race an EWS on a bike like this. But it does corner well. It just has a different feel altogether with it. So, you know, who's this bike really for? That's the big question, right? Neither one of these bikes, like I said, I would recommend as a race bike. But if you're a trail rider that maybe goes to the bike park a handful of times, you know, they both jump fine, they both rally berms just fine. This is a great bike to look at. This is, unlike a lot of the bikes that, you know, we end up testing around here, it's a pleasure to take on a 3-4 hour ride, to do a quick work lap, to even go race cross country on. I raced the EVO in a cross country race and did pretty well. So they're both very efficient bikes, which is something that kind of gets overlooked. They're also both very sporty. Like they give you a lot of feedback, and that can be really fun on your normal single track, you know, on your more traditional, you know, high mountain riding or whatever. So, you know, as long as you put this in the right category, it's a very good bike. And if you know, look at it through the wrong lens, you're going to be let down. So end of the day, both these bikes are awesome. I would definitely steer toward the all carbon Stumpjumper if you live somewhere where technical climbing's more a thing and you don't want the longest, lowest bike out there. I'd go more toward the EVO if you live somewhere where you've got steeper, twisty trails that aren't overly rough. You know, in those situations, you're gonna love it. Hope you enjoyed the review, guys. Thanks for tuning in.